Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gay with God podcast. I am Midge Noble. I may not sound like Midge Noble. We may cough a little bit today. I don't know. But I am back. I missed last week because I had pneumonia. And I am now not having a fever, so I'm assuming that I don't really have pneumonia, although I have some after effects of the pneumonia. And still don't feel great, don't have a lot of energy, but yet I'm not coughing nonstop, so that's good news. And I am so glad to be back with you guys, especially on this special January day, the 20th of January, where we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King. And the topic for today is if you are in the darkness, turn on the light. And I know what today represents for a lot of people. It represents hope. It represents growth and change. It represents decency. All of those things we attribute to the ministry, the fortitude, the vision of Dr. Martin Luther King and all of those who surrounded him. I know that there were times that he wanted to give up, and he was sometimes misguided because he was young and he had a vision, but sometimes he didn't quite know where to take that vision. And it is only by the folks that were surrounding him where he was able to be more than he, I think, really knew he was going to be. So we give some credit to Bayard Rustin, who was Martin Luther King's right-hand man. And even though he doesn't get the credit that he always deserves, he was indispensable to the civil rights force and movement. And he's one of our brothers in our community, openly gay, and stood by his values and his beliefs and really spurred on Martin Luther King so that his vision could also, be a part of the change. And so working behind the scenes, but continuing to support Dr. King. And I'm not taking anything away from Dr. King. I mean, he was a force of nature and a positive force in nature. And we give him credit today. And I'm so grateful kind of grateful that on this day, when there is so much darkness and so much fear and so much angst, that we have the light of Dr. Martin Luther King to hold up in place of the darkness. I really did believe that I would just put a big black mark on my Facebook page, go back to bed and be done. But I really am so grateful that we have Martin Luther King on this day, which I don't really know how that actually happened, but I'm glad that it's today that we get to celebrate Martin Luther King and wipe out some darkness. And so we want to stay in the light. So I'm not going to make this whole thing about Dr. Martin Luther King. There's lots of things that people are talking about, and if you can find them online, continue to explore that. Today, I want to focus on us as a community and where we find ourselves in the darkness today. I believe in a lot of things, and one of the things I believe is that our body tells us the things that we don't want to admit and the things that we're trying to hide. Our bodies will eventually bring the light to ourselves in illness so that we have to slow down, in maybe strep throat when we don't have anything we need to say or what we're about to say is not right. So I do believe that sometimes illness is working in tandem with our conscience and that we need to pay attention to those signs. And that's why when I really realized that I was sick, and I didn't think I had been. I tested for COVID and I was negative, and excuse me, and so I really thought I just had a nasty exposure to some cleaners that I'd been using in the bathroom and that it had affected my throat. I had no idea, absolutely none, that I was sick with pneumonia. Um, but I believe that that gave me a chance and permission to stop. And I needed to stop because I was avoiding the angst of this day in all that it is in on the dark side. You know, this inauguration to me is probably the biggest feeling of defeat that I have had in years as far as seeing us going backwards. I've always believed in the power of hope. I've always believed in this faith of things not seen, that it could be real and that we are all going on a journey together to walk each other home. And then when the darkness entered our life politically and I saw how bad it could get. And now looking back, it was like hardly nothing. It was a bad thing and we did lose rights and we were in jeopardy. And yet the worst of the worst had not happened. But now, as we've already seen, that they are very organized and they have a lot of things in place, and they're already starting the agenda of getting people out of the country. They've already started manipulating the government. They've already started doing things that aren't legal, um, suspending the lowering of flags for President Carter just so this guy can look like he's all that. It's already started. And so the darkness feels very oppressive. And it feels oppressive because everything that we've known that we were supposed to do in the face of darkness is not working. It's not working because they're coming from a place of evil and they're not following the rules. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over the last year when people kept telling me to calm down. It's going to be fine. Trust in God. And I know I say that with a little bit of attitude, but because I'm like, you know, the apostles trusted in Jesus and they all wound up dead. So don't be telling me that I'm not going to be in trouble. Um, but, you know, this whole past year, I've had conversations when people say, well, they can't do that. That's not legal. That's not in the Constitution. They don't care. I've said that 1,000 times at least. They don't care if it's constitutional, if it's the law, if it's the right thing, if it's a bad thing. They don't care. They have their belief, and just like those who followed Hitler, they will let him go as far as he has to go just to stay on his side. Because, you know, keep your enemies closer so you might not get in the fray. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter who you are, how close you think you are to that right-winged people. They are not going to care about you in the end. They don't care about you now. They're using you now, but they don't care about you now. They care about their vision and their power and their money. And when you don't have a soul and all you have is your power and your money, everybody will be stomped on in order for them to climb as high as they want to climb. So we are in the darkness. I said if you're in the darkness, but we are in the darkness, and yet we hold the light. Now, what does that mean? The light is that unquenchable fire of the Holy Spirit that is in us. But you won't know it's in you unless you slow down, get quiet, and connect to her. She is the voice of hope and reason in the entire Trinity. And I love that they divided the jobs up because I like a focal point. So I know that for me, God is like the big umbrella. And God created, God made, God ordains, God kind of controls. And then from that umbrella, we get our brother Jesus, who showed us how to be human on earth with a little bit of divinity. Now, he had a whole lot more divinity than we do. He was human and divine. We are pretty much all human with a wee bit of divinity breathed into us. So that's why we can do miraculous things. That's why we do have love that is always churning. And even when we lose it for a little bit, we can find it again. Excuse me. I could edit these out, but then it wouldn't be as much fun, right? So that that to me, was really great to be able to see Jesus, especially in The Chosen. I mean, I know it's made up, however, it's scripturally based, and the character, that plays Jesus is just so approachable and just like the way I want Jesus to be for me. That's who I want to keep in my mind when I'm thinking about Jesus. So, and then the Holy Spirit comes in, and she is this breath of air. I just love the shack and how they represented the Holy Spirit, and she was so ethereal, but yet so present and so calming. And she didn't have to make any big proclamation. She just moved about and guided with this beautiful, beautiful soul. And that's what I think is in our souls. I think we have her in us, always present to calm us, to spur us on, to nudge us forward. And so I really am glad that we can have the three in one and yet see the difference in everything that God does for us. And because we're human, it's nice that we can have, different ideas of who God is within us. Um, it is the Holy Spirit that is going to continue to be lit and present within us. And that's where we have to land. That's the light that we turn on in this darkness. For me, I will not watch today. I'm not turning on the TV except for probably Netflix to distract myself. I'm going to do some other things. I'm doing backstory preaching at 1 o'clock, which is an online way to look at the gospel for the next Sunday and to break it apart. Um, I'm going to do that. I have a meeting tonight with the lay preachers. Um, I'm excited now that I'm completely licensed to preach in any parish in the Episcopal Church that wants to call me. I look forward to where God is going to lead this call. Um, so I have things that I'm going to be doing. I have clients this week. I have this podcast. I have other meetings this week. And I'm going to stay in shelter because I still don't feel well. And I think I am, fragile as far as picking up other things. I've lived in a house with my wife who has type A flu, and I had pneumonia. And as far as I know, we have not cross-pollinated. We've tried really hard to be careful. Although our house is not that big, so if we're both living here, we're both exposed to each other. But hopefully, our antibiotics that we're taking are balancing out all of that. Um, so I'm going to shelter in place, and I'm going to be careful. Um, and I'm going to continue to find the light within me. I'm not going to let them turn off my light. Because light, we've said over and over, is more powerful than darkness. You can't bring darkness into the light. That's just not possible. But light can always dispel the darkness. And that's where we are now, my beloveds. We are the light in the world right now. And if we all collectively continue to be the light in how we think, how we speak, how we behave, the love that we put into the world, it cannot be quenched. It can't. So when the darkness feels oppressive, that's when you need to find the people that are in your community that still believe in light and hope and goodness. We're all out there. And you can always find it here. You can always request a visit with me free of charge. You can request a visit for me, a complimentary session, and let's just talk about it. Don't be out there by yourself. all of us have our own little friend pack, but sometimes we don't tell our friends everything, which is kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, we love each other, but every once in a while people hold something back. And that's the beauty of coaching or therapy, is that you get to leave your position in the pack of your dearest and best friends, and you can go and completely dump it somewhere and get some perspective and then come back a little bit stronger to your pack. So, you know, we are here for each other. We are here to continue to be the light. And it's a hard job. It's a hard job to stay positive when everything looks so depressing and when there's so much fear. And although I am there with you, I have this I have this hope. I have this hope that this is a major shift for many of us. It wakes us up to the point where we can't be complacent. And we're going to do it all a different way. I mean, I feel really burned by all the all the advertisements that hooked me into paying for a candidate to get elected that didn't get elected. And I know there's a lot that I don't understand about it. But I don't think we should be putting out as much money as they expect us to put out on the chance that somebody's going to play fair and then we'll get elected because it's the right thing. You can't count on that. So, I'm licking my wounds a little bit about, how much I really thought that was going to help. And I'm growing up a little bit in that. And yet, I still have the belief and the hope that this is a shift for all of us, that we're standing in a moment in time where, although for me the worst possible outcome has happened, that it is not the last outcome that's going to happen. So we may shelter in place for a while. We may watch our P's and Q's. Hopefully everybody got prepared and listened to the podcast where I was talking about we needed to get all of our paperwork in place. My new will and power of attorney and health power of attorney, and all of those ducks are in a row. And we're going to make it through this. And we just don't know how we're going to be on the other side. We're going to be a little battered. We're going to be a little disillusioned. And yet we create our own realities. We can decide how we're going to be on the other side of this. I plan to still be standing. I am always going to be gay with God, and nobody can stop that. You can change my paperwork, but I'm gay with God. I am married to my wife, and we have all of our assets and all of our lives entwined legally. And you may think it's not going to be legal later, but as far as the paperwork goes, my wife and I are on everything that we own together. And so, I will have access to her checking account. She will have access to mine. We've always kept separate accounts because I want to be able to use my own generated money to buy gifts for her, so that we're not using the joint account for that. So we have, a joint card. We have separate cards. We have separate accounts, and yet we have things together, and our names are on everything. So, we made these plans many, 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 many years ago, probably 30 years ago, if not more. And so that protects us as far as that goes. And I don't know how it's all going to turn out. I don't have a crystal ball. And I don't get burning bushes, but but I do have this sense of that we're going to make it through this, and we may be a little bit burnt, and we may be a little bit crispy, and we may be totally disillusioned by the end of it. But as long as we're above ground and still breathing, change can still happen, and wrongs can be turned right, and lessons can be learned. So stick with us. Don't give up. Don't let this be the thing, because if we give up in this time, he wins. We cannot let the spirit of who we are be lessened by his ignorance. And we can't let the hope of all that is be tarnished by his deceits and his nastiness and his vileness, because the purpose for his existence is to either mirror us or to show us who we're not. And we are not like him. So we have to turn on the light in wherever we are sitting, standing, moving about our lives. We must turn on the light and keep it shining for each other. And if your light starts to get dim, connect with community and get recharged. We can do this together. So if you feel like you're in the darkness, reach out to me. Go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com and schedule a confidential session with me. And let's see where you need to go, because community is available and you have me in your back pocket if you need to talk. Thank you, everybody. I really honor you and I celebrate the spirit within you, and I can see your beauty and it's shining bright. Please go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com to see where you can connect with me and to get that complimentary session if you're interested. Check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly group entitled My Faith Journey. And make sure that when you join the Gay with God group, you answer all the questions to make sure that you are connecting to the right group and that we're on the same page. We want to make sure that everybody is safe in that group, and I need to make sure who's coming in so that we can all be protected. If you're listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you're gay, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.